Good morning, everyone. Good morning, kids. Good to see you. Good to hear you. Those of you watching online, welcome. My name's Katie. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the worship director here, and I would love it if you would join us in singing as we get started today. So stand or rise as you're able. We'll sing together.
The kingdom of the Lord is here. Come gather all from far and near. Awake your mind and have no fear. God's arms are open wide. No armored guards protect its gates. No tangled chains of judgment wait. Just free your blessed heart from hate, and human come inside. Here enemies stand side by side, by truth and justice unified. It's growing where the old one died, where any wound is healed. Here earthly cries are not ignored. It blooms and lives forevermore, in places that our hands restore, by selfless love revealed. Where kindness overcomes the mean, where love is like the morning's gleam, and peace an ever-flowing stream, the kingdom lives today. Where love and understanding's learned, where prejudice is left to burn, oppression's tables overturned. Oh God, show us the way. Your kingdom come, your will be done. May we sustain what you've begun, till all creation is made one. Oh, Jesus, lead us on. The kingdom of the Lord is here. The evening clouds begin to clear. The morning sun will soon appear. Come and reveal the dawn.
You can have a seat.
Well, good morning. Right on cue. Way to go. It is so good to be with you on this beautiful, beautiful November morning. My name's Jeremy. I'm the pastor here of the Grove, Cottage Grove, and we are a new church that exists to grow goodness. That is what we do. That is why we do everything that we do. And so my hope is that just your being here this morning, you're watching with us online, you're somehow interacting with us during the week out in the community is nurturing healing, wholeness, and beauty in and through you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jordan. I'm one of the worship leaders here at the Grove. I'd like to bring your attention to the little handout that you were given on your way in. If you look on the inside, there's a little handout on the inside of the handout that you can put down your contact information. I believe today is the 19th, maybe?
Yes, 19th.
19th?
Yep.
1119 for the top there. And you can leave whatever information you'd like us to have. And then on the back of that, there's lots of great boxes for you to check on specific things that you're interested in learning more about. So if you give us your contact information, we can get that information to you. And then also on the inside of the worship bulletin, there's an opportunity to give as well. So we do online giving, we do giving through Venmo, and then we also do in-person giving to help continue to grow goodness here at the Grove. So in-person giving, there's a little box in the back. And then as you head out this morning, you can drop this or any other gifts that you have in the basket back there.
I'll turn your attention then to the back of the worship handout. This is where we have our 3 things that we're really trying to key in on this month, the 3 most important things. We will go into all of the details about all of those things at the end of the service rather than boring you or overwhelming you with all those details now. But if you're interested in any of the details about any of those things, you can go to those web pages or scan those QR codes, and then you can get all of the information you need about all of those things.
And as you can see, kids are extremely valued here at the Grove, so there's lots of great opportunities for them. There's our wiggle space off to the side where there's quiet activities for them to do while they're here with us in worship. And then there's activity sheets behind the pews, so adults, these aren't just for kids. Feel free to use those as well. And then we also have Grove Kids, so in a little while we'll sing a special little song for our kids to head on out where they can build relationships and learn more about God. And then we also do have a fully staffed nursery that is for 6 weeks to 3 years old, and then Grove Kids will be from 4 years old to 5th grade. And if your kid is heading out to either the nursery or Grove Kids, we just ask that you fill out one of these forms. They're in the back of the pews so that we can contact you if anything were to happen while they're out there.
With that, we now get to move into Connection Point. Yay! Connection Point is the introvert's least favorite part of the service. This is where we give you the opportunity to connect with people around you, building meaningful relationships, even and especially through short interactions like this is incredibly important for you to make a connection not only to other people, but connection to a thing like a church. So each week we give you that opportunity. In just a moment, we'll have you stand up, find someone next to you you don't know or don't know very well, introduce yourself, and then we'll give you this discussion question. You may have noticed I'm wearing a hoodie this morning. I don't care what anybody out there wears, but I try to not dress down too much up here because I at least want to be taken a little bit seriously. But this was just too fitting today with our series. It's Good Trouble, so Good Troublemaker. Also, it's a really good excuse for me to wear something comfy up here. So the question for today is, what is your go-to comfy clothing item? For me, it's like hoodie sweatshirts. Maybe for you, it is big, baggy sweatpants or like comfy socks, or maybe you like tight things because it makes you feel like you're getting a hug. I don't know. What is your go-to comfy clothing item? So why don't you stand up, find someone near you don't know very well, introduce yourself, and discuss that question.
finish up. Ooh, sorry. You guys can finish up. And actually, kids, it's time for y'all to go out to Grove Kids, so we will sing you out on your way. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Every color, shape, and type, they are precious in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world.
I am blown away every single week by the amount of kids that head out at that time. And also by the number of adults who get to remain in here. That's fantastic. You might know that this is, we're in the middle of Native American Heritage Month. I've tried to mention that each of the past couple weeks. If you're paying attention at all, more and more people, more and more organizations are talking about that as well. I'm going to be talking more about that as a part of our series that we're in called Good Trouble during my sermon. But one of the things that we decided as a church a few years ago, after the murder of George Floyd, we launched a racial justice steering committee, and that team's their purpose, their mission was to say, we don't want racial justice, racial reconciliation to just be this thing that we set aside and we talk about every once in a while just when it comes up. We need to be strategic in this as a commitment that we are making to the ongoing hard work of pursuing racial justice and racial reconciliation. And so that team got together, they did lots of research in what it means for us as individuals and us as a church to make that type of commitment. And one of the things that they also did was kind of lay out a map for us to say, what are the things that we can be doing going forward and be doing regularly as well to make that type of commitment. And one of the things that was an outcome of that team's work was coming up with what's called the land acknowledgement. You might be familiar with this in other places, other spaces, different organizations making a land acknowledgement. You might also be familiar with our land acknowledgement because we just did it 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, something like that, to line up with what was formerly Christopher Columbus Day and is now Indigenous Peoples Day. We wanted to make sure to sync those two things up. But we do it again today, one, because it is the end of this series that we're in, and it fits really well with the theme that we're talking about today of making this commitment, this ongoing commitment to racial justice and racial reconciliation. Because we are in the middle and approaching the end of Native American Heritage Month, and also because we are in this week of Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving, if you grew up in a certain tradition, has some racial overtones in its traditional telling that might not actually be consistent with what truly happened. And so we thought, what better time than now to come back to this land acknowledgement once again. And so we're going to have Maggie come up here and read it for us. And we'll have it displayed here up on the screen. Last time we tried to have you read along with it, and that got a little bit complicated. So we're just going to have Maggie read it, and then you can follow along with her. Thank you, Maggie.
Good morning. The Grove United Land Acknowledgement. The people of the Grove UMC acknowledge that our church sites are located on the ancestral home of the Wapikute Dakota people who continue to live on and steward this land, as they have for generations. We acknowledge the history of trauma the Dakota people have suffered due to unjust practices by the government of the United States and complicity of North American Christianity, including progenitors of the United Methodist Church. This trauma is not just historic, it is also generational and contemporary. These unjust practices are inconsistent with the Grove's mission to grow goodness. We acknowledge the sanctity of Dakota heritage, their connection to the land, and their unique ability to serve as examples of land stewardship, as well as supportive, connected communities. The Grove UMC commits to making connections with Indigenous people and to listen to their stories and learn how we can help address the errors of the past and make a better today and tomorrow for Indigenous people.
Thank you, Maggie. Well, instead of doing sort of our normal stand and sing moment in the middle of worship today, I wanted to lead us through a communal prayer exercise that is both spoken and sung. If you've never done anything like this before, I'll be the reader. I'm going to read prayers, and then we respond with a sung response that we'll teach you in a minute. This prayer that we've borrowed from the United Church of Christ is sort of a confession, an acknowledgement that we as individuals and we collectively fall short in how we treat other human beings. But we don't just leave it as a confession like, we suck. But like we move on from that. We say, we've got work to do. We move forward with hope and prayer that we will do better going forward. So we'll teach you this phrase that we'll sing together, and then I'll start with reading, and then I will gesture to you when it's time to follow that up with the sung response, and it will also be up here on the screen. So it goes like this. Lord, make me an instrument of peace, an instrument of peace. Can we try that one time? Lord, make me an instrument of peace, an instrument of peace. Okay, and we'll go back to that prayer. I'll start by reading. O God, with our hearts and minds bent on racial justice and healing, we confess that the sin of racial hatred and prejudice distorts your divine plan for our human lives. You created us in divine likeness, diverse and beautiful. In every person, every race is your image. But too often, we fail to recognize your image in all. Forgive us. Lord, make me an instrument of peace, an instrument of peace. You created us in divine freedom to be free. In every decision, every choice is your possibility of justice. But too often, we fail to choose to advocate for your justice for all. Forgive us. Lord, make me an instrument of peace, an instrument of peace. You created for us divine abundance to tend and share. In every garden, every social structure is your seed of community. But too often we fail to create that community which includes all and gives to all equal access to your abundant life. Forgive us. Lord, make me an instrument of peace, an instrument of peace. Open our eyes to distinguish good from evil. Open our hearts to desire good over evil. Strengthen our wills to choose good over evil, so that we may create among us your beloved community. Lord, make me an instrument of peace, an instrument of peace. We'll continue to sing the verses of this song. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is darkness, the good news. God's gift of grace in Jesus Christ forgives us and sets us free to live full lives in community. We may go forth confident of the grace to see the new eyes beyond racial prejudice, to imagine with renewed fervor justice and mercy for all, and to create with a new will a community where all are given access to God's abundant life. Amen.
This is the third and final week of this series that we have been going through called Good Trouble. It's about courageously confronting racism. We're doing this study not because we're setting aside the most important things about what it means for us to be a church, to take 3 weeks, and then after this we're going to get back to the actual important things. The purpose, the reason we're doing this is because we want to highlight something, take time out of our normal operating procedures to highlight something that is extremely important to us and that is essential to what it means for us to be individual followers of Jesus and for us to be the church. We say repeatedly every single week, why do we exist? To grow goodness, right? And one of the things that it means to grow goodness is to cultivate the common good. And one of the things that it means to cultivate the common good is to do the things necessary to pursue racial justice and reconciliation. This is not something to the side, but it is essential to what it means for us to be the church, for us to be the Grove, Cottage Grove, for what it means to be, for what it means to grow goodness. This series, too, has been following, it's largely based on this book by Jamar Tisby, who is a theologian and historian. He cares deeply about the church. He cares deeply about individual followers of Jesus living this stuff out. And so one of the things that he does in his book, How to Fight Racism, is he lays out this framework that we can all follow and that we have been tracking over these 3 weeks. And the framework is 3 letters, ARC, A-R-C. So the first week we talked about awareness. Yes, we need to grow in our awareness of the racial divide, of racial injustice, about the things that separate us. But we can't stay there. We then need to move into relationship, fostering relationships with people who are different from us in order that we can pursue reconciliation. And then today we move into that third letter, the C, which is about commitment, which is taking the step of, all right, well, we can be aware and we can foster relationships, but we need to be committed to this thing, not just now, but going forward, and committed to the hard work that is going to be required for us to pursue justice and reconciliation. So this had me thinking this past week about my first job as a pastor. When I graduated, I started a job as an outreach and student ministry pastor at a church, at a new church start in Shakopee. You might be familiar with Shakopee because Valley Fair. Shakopee is like the Cottage Grove of the southwest suburbs. It goes down into the valley along the Minnesota River instead of the Mississippi River. It's just like the opposite corner. So there I was outreach and student ministry pastor. The student ministry part was pretty obvious. I was there to oversee the ministries for students who were grades 6 through 12. That was the obvious part. The outreach part was less obvious. Basically, I was responsible for overseeing all of the ministries that did anything outside of the 4 walls of the church. That's a lot. That's a lot in any church. But we were a new church start that did not have a building, which meant that all of the ministries outside of the 4 walls of the local church was even more. So there was a lot that was included in that job title in my responsibilities. And as I later found out, one of the responsibilities that was covered under that outreach part was planning missions trips. It came down for me as directed by our elder board at that time in 2013, late 2013. They requested that in my job that I needed to plan a family missions trip for our church. there are a few qualifications. One of them was that it needed to be for families, including families of young children, 5 years and up. It needed to be close, but not too close. And it needed to be somehow cross-cultural. So, also, I needed to make the decision. I needed to find it and make the decision within like 2 months so we could begin planning for it. That's a lot to try to do and to try to do it right. But it was my job. I took it on, and I did my research as best as I could, and eventually landed on an organization that had short-term missions trips to Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. You may or may not be familiar with what missions trips are. I had a conversation just in the last couple of weeks. I used that term mission trip, and someone in the congregation had no idea what I was talking about. So you might not know what a mission trip is, or if you do know what a mission trip is, it's possible that you have a different understanding of what they are and what they're for. So in my understanding of what a mission trip is meant for is it's an opportunity for you to get out of your comfort zone, to get out of your context, to go somewhere else where you can partner with a local organization that is doing meaningful work, that is on the ground, that is indigenous to that place. You're able to partner with them in the work that they are doing there. And hopefully, one of the results is that somehow through you doing that, you yourself are being changed. So that when you leave that after a week or so, when you leave that mission trip, you go back home and you have been changed in such a way where you're making now this commitment to do differently in your normal life back at home. Does that make sense? So like that's one perspective on what a mission trip is and what a mission trip is for. There's another perspective on what mission trips are and what they're for, however. Some people would suggest that mission trips are for going to a place and you go to that place acknowledging that there is something wrong with that place. And you are coming in to help to fix what is wrong with that place. And as you're fixing what is wrong with that place, you are then given the opportunity to tell those people whose problems you're fixing about Jesus. So you do that thing, you do the projects that are out in front of you, you fix the problems with that place, you then use that as a platform to tell those people about Jesus. You then go home patting yourself on the back, and you give a report back to the congregation about how you brought hope to these people who were hopeless, how you brought Jesus to these people who were hopeless, and everybody stands up and cheers, and then you go on with your normal everyday life. That is also a perspective on what mission trips are and what they're for. And some people are shaking their heads. You're probably very familiar with maybe this. What I found out, unfortunately, as we were not only planning this trip, but then as we went to Pine Ridge, was that many of the people in our church that were a part of this trip that I was leading, and the organization that we were going with, had that mindset. And that is the mindset with which they brought to this trip, and which they had certain expectations about what the trip was and what they were supposed to get out of it. So in August 2nd, timeline's important here, you'll find out why later. August 2nd of 2014, we arrive in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. We had 50 people on this family mission trip, ages 6 to 60. And we showed up in our caravan of vans, and we unloaded, and we got settled in our rooms, and then we went and did an orientation to learn a little bit about what we would be doing over the course of the week, these different work projects that we would be doing throughout the reservation. And then we had a worship service to like chin up those important emotions within us to go out and do this work over the course of the week. And then we went to bed, and then we got up the next morning, and we went off to these different projects to do that work. The things that we did not do, we did not talk about or focus on how the people of Pine Ridge got there. We did not talk about the Oglala Lakota people and their forced removal from their land to go onto this reservation. We didn't talk about any of that. We did not talk about the Wounded Knee Massacre. where several hundred men, women, and children were killed by the United States Army right on the Pine Ridge Reservation. We did not talk about re-education, where young Native American children were picked up on buses and brought somewhere where they could learn to get the Indian out of them, basically. We didn't talk about that. And we didn't talk about the generational trauma that comes along with all of that. We went out and we did our work. We found the problems. We worked to fix them, and we patted ourselves on the back along the way, and we looked for opportunities to share Jesus with people. Well, within 2 days, it was very clear that that second mindset was the one that we were working on, because suddenly there were rumblings from our crew. There were rumblings of this talk from some of the locals around white man's religion, and that was unsettling. There was this sense that, these people that we're serving, they don't really appreciate what we are doing for them. And then there were even things like we would get back after doing the projects, and there were people who were upset because we didn't get our food quickly enough. So there's all these rumblings within our group, and it was clear that that's what they were here for. They were here to fix the problems. They were not here for long-term development. They were not here for transformation within themselves. They were here to do that work and then walk back and congratulate themselves. And that's what the organization was trying to provide as well. Hopefully you see that as a not great way of understanding missions work. And that was a not great perspective for our group to come in with, nor that organization to have. And yet, that type of mindset is often the type of mindset that individuals and organizations, churches, whole communities have when it comes to combating racism. We see a problem, right? We have that acknowledgement. There's something that is wrong here. Great. That's a good start. Then there is we want to do something to fix that problem. Okay? Let's try to do that thing. But then there is not an instant gratification. This type of work takes time and investment and mistakes and recorrection and a commitment. And that commitment is not often there. And so if there aren't quick results, if there isn't a quick turnaround, there's often a sense of, why are we continuing to do this? It's not actually making a difference. Why on earth would we continue to do this work? And I want to argue, and hopefully you are coming to this conclusion as well, that is not what we as individual followers of Jesus, nor a church, nor a community are called to. This is not courageously confronting racism. There is a better way to make that type of commitment, starting with acknowledgement and then relationships, then moving towards the long, hard work of commitment. Last week, I talked about this guy named Paul. Paul was one of the earliest followers of Jesus. He came to understand the grace of God so personally that he was convinced that it was not just for him, it was not just for people for him, but he needed to tell as many people as possible. And so he started traveling throughout the Roman Empire and stopping in these different cities and starting new churches and raising up local leaders and then putting those leaders in charge and then moving on to the next city. And he would do that over and over and over again, making his way east. Eventually he wanted to end up in Spain. But he didn't leave them behind. What he did is he often either would go back and visit them or write letters back to them to encourage them and then to remind them of the things that were most important. Sometimes those letters were quite critical. Other times, however, he was excited about what was going on there, and so there was the encouragement of, you're doing this great work, but don't get exhausted by it. Continue in it. Continue to make this commitment. Continue to do this work because it is important, even and especially when it takes a long time. So one of those churches was the church in Philippi, and he writes this letter, which we have in our Bibles, called the book of Philippians. And this passage, which we're going to read together right now, is from Philippians chapter 2. It's verses 1 through 11. It's going to be up here on the screen behind me. Therefore, if there is any encouragement in Christ, any comfort provided by love, any fellowship in the Spirit, any affection or mercy, complete my joy and be of the same mind, by having the same love, being united in spirit, and having one purpose. Instead of being motivated by selfish ambition or vanity, each of you should, in humility, be moved to treat one another as more important than yourself. Each of you should be concerned not only about your own interests, but about the interests of others as well. You should have the same attitude toward one another that Christ Jesus had, who, though he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking on the form of a slave, by looking like other men, and by sharing in human nature. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. As a result, God exalted him and gave him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee will bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Just as there is different perspectives on what mission trips are and what they're for, there are different perspectives on what Jesus was doing and why he was doing it. And there are whole church traditions that suggest that what Jesus did, what Jesus was here for, was to die. Stop, full stop. Jesus died. That was the point. And somehow we got some sort of benefit. We got to go to heaven eventually if we believe that he died for us. The whole point was death. That's where it ends. Which, if that's your perspective, what an incredible waste of time for Jesus to live around for 33 years. What an incredible waste of time. He could have just gotten to it, right? He could have just died immediately. Unless the purpose is not just the death, right? Unless the main thing is not actually the death after those 33 years, but maybe the point, maybe the perspective on why Jesus came was, in fact, those 33 years. Maybe those 33 years were important because they showed us something important, not only about Jesus, not only about God, but what it means for us to be fully human. There's this one word that occurs in the middle of this passage when it's talking about what Paul is asking the people in Philippi to act like, and he's using Jesus as an example of this is how you go about doing this faithful work. And the word in Greek is kenosis. In the English translation, it is emptied. Jesus emptied himself. What it means that Jesus had all of these things that he could have held on to. People were going around saying that he was God. He could have gone around saying, you know what, have you heard who I am? You know who I am, right? God. Or there were people going around saying, oh, he is the long-promised king of Israel. You've heard about me, right? I'm the king. No, he didn't do that at all. Instead, he emptied himself of all of those privileges in order to take on the fullness of the human experience for 33 years, for all that comes with that. In Jesus, God made a commitment, and it was a long commitment, 33 years. And it was a hard commitment to say, I'm going to be on the ground and experiencing everything that it means to be human in order for me to make a connection with these people, in order for things to be different going forward, not only for him, but for the people that he showed up for. Jamar Tisby, who is the author of the book that we've been using for this series, he talks about the experience of racism being like a light switch and a smoke alarm. And it's a light switch and a smoke alarm for different types of people. So on the one hand, for people who largely look like me and have similar life experience to people like me, the experience of racism is like a light switch. There are moments in which that switch gets flipped. There are things that show up on the TV where an unarmed black person is killed by police. That gets switched. There's somehow like this overt racism that we see in the world around us. Slurs that get thrown around or even said under your breath. That light switch gets flipped. We hear about things like the experiences that I talked about of the people in Pine Ridge, the massacre by the United States Army. We didn't know about that before. Light switch is flipped. It can go back off, though, with time, or with other experiences, or when we forget about the things that turned it on. For other people, though, for black, indigenous, people of color, the experience of racism is largely like a smoke alarm. It's always there and always aware of what's going on in the air, and it is ready for when that thing shows up because it has been trained from life experience to be ready for it. Most black people don't need to be educated about systemic racism because they have it in their bodies and their bones from the past 400 years of living in America. Native people don't need to be told or educated about white man's religion because they have hundreds of years of experience of people bringing their religion to them and all of the trauma and the death that follows from that. That smoke alarm is constantly there and ready for the things that are moving through the air. And so Jamar Tisby says, again, for those people who look like us and have the experiences, look like me and have the experiences like me, we need to think about what we can do to continue to keep that light switch on. It is a commitment to continue to keep that light switch on, making ourselves aware, having those relationships, and committing to being aware of it in order that we can do something about it. Even and especially when it takes a long time, like 33 years or longer. Which brings me all the way back to Pine Ridge Reservation, the first week of August 2014. We arrived on August 2nd. By August 4th, things were hitting the fan. And something had to be done. And so at that point, when I heard all of that grumbling, it was over dinner when I was hearing people complain about the food not showing up quickly enough. I said, all church meeting, 20 minutes in that room. And 20 minutes later, we sat in a big circle, and I talked about what was going on and what I was observing in them and observing in the projects that we were doing. And there was a light switch that went on, not only for me, but for our entire group. And what it meant was that we went in as learners. We went in not trying to fix people, not trying to fix problems, but to say, how can this experience transform us? How can we use this as a commitment, not only here and now, but for ways of changing us as we go forward, as we go back home? And there was a light switch that happened in the people in that room. And the rest of the week was completely different. The mentality, the mindset of the people on our team was completely different. And the reception of the people that we were working with was completely different as well, because they no longer saw themselves as mere projects. And I was convinced that as we went back, I needed to have that commitment as well. That it wasn't just about this week, but that I was going to bring that commitment back, not only in my own life, but in my ministry as I went back to that church in Shakopee. And then Saturday, we were getting ready to head back home, August 9th, 2014. And on August 9th, 2014, news started breaking that an 18-year-old named Michael Brown had been killed by police in Ferguson, Missouri. And many of the reports that were coming out at that time were that Michael Brown was shot by the Ferguson police while he had his hands up in the air. These might seem like completely disconnected things. But it was the experience of that time, of that week in Pine Ridge, that commitment that I was making in my head to racial justice and reconciliation, that I could not separate those two things. The light switch had been turned on. It was like a piece of tape was put over it, that I wasn't going to let it shut back off or separate those two things that were happening. And so I went back and I was convinced I'm not going to look away from this. I am not going to keep quiet about this. I am going to go back to my suburban church in Minnesota and talk about this. Which was not entirely received well. I did not get fired from this church. I did not get fired because of this thing, but the next Sunday when I got up and talked about this, it was clear that that was an inflection point for me in my experience at that church, and my time at that church was now limited because of the commitment and because of the stand that I was making. And yet what that meant was I was making that commitment for myself and making the commitment for any ministry that I was going to lead. And all the way back in August of 2014, the seeds were planted that eventually led to the starting of a new church in Cottage Grove that said one of the fundamental things of what it means for us to be a church is to cultivate the common good and be committed to the long, difficult work of racial justice and reconciliation. So, as those of us who believe in a self-emptying God, who made a commitment to set everything aside in order to take on the fullness of the human experience in all of its messiness, may we be willing to be self-emptying as well. May we commit to a life's work of racial justice and reconciliation. It is not easy work. It is not short work. There is not much instant gratification in this type of work. But it is worth it. May that be so.
Will you rise? Sing with us. Fear runs deep, spreading like a virus. Hate is cheap. From afar it costs you nothing, sister, take my hand, brother, we will stand. Open up your heart and find love is turning over tables, breaking off chains. When I see you with a stranger, I'm no longer a slave. Turning over tables, tearing down walls, building up the bridges between the Let courage be my willingness to listen, so I can feel the wound inside my heart. Let seeds of peace grow in hearts around us. Let trees of hope bring shade to all mankind. Sister, take my hand, brother, we will stand. Open up your heart and find love is turning over tables, breaking off chains. When I see you with a stranger, I'm no longer a slave. slave, turning over table, tearing down walls, building up the bridges between your souls. Maybe that.
There
We
you go,
got it, we
Grant.
got
You got it.
All right, everything except me. Let's try it. Okay. You're already standing. I'll make this quick. We've got the three things on the back, the three most important things that we are trying to key in on this month. First of all, we've been talking about this for many weeks now. Our stewardship campaign. For those of you who consider the Cottage Grove to be your church home, we are trying to, we have this campaign every fall to make plans for the year ahead, budget plans for the year ahead, and for each of you to make plans for your own giving for the year ahead. And then at the end of November, we get to celebrate what we have collectively committed to. So just as a reminder for our goals for the year, we are trying to have 40 households make a pledge of some sort in their giving, 22 of them as new commitments for the first time. Whether you've given before or not, this is a new pledge. And then 12, I believe, are increasing pledges from previous years. So again, we would like to be able to, we're going to announce those final tallies next week to celebrate them together, what we have collectively committed to in the year ahead. We have made really good strides towards all of those. And if you have not made a pledge, now's your opportunity to get included in that number that we get to celebrate next week. So again, you've got a week in order to do that. You can scan that QR code on the back and submit that online. Otherwise, there are physical cards, if you like that you can mail in to our church office in the next week. Jumping down to the bottom, we have Grove groups. Again, we're going to keep our Grove group registrations through the end of the month. These are opportunities for you to connect with a smaller number of people to say these are the meaningful relationships that I'm investing in for this year. If you have not yet registered for them, do so now, going to that QR code to that website so that we can get those groups formed and launching sometime in the next couple weeks. And then the last thing, which is a big one, is Christmas. I again have the whole list of all of the different Christmas things for you to know about. The most timely, first of all, we have the poinsettia, or as we talked about and learned last week, the Quetla Shoshell order form. For ordering flowers to be able to have up here on the stage. We have these order forms at the table at the back. Do we not have them anymore? They're here somewhere. I will find them after the service and get them on either that table or the coffee table out there. They're on the back table. They're on the back table, says Lily. Okay, so if you're interested in ordering those, great. We want those orders in by December 1st, though. Okay, so those forms are back there. You can fill one out and then drop it in the basket on that back table. And then we have Christmas decorating, which is happening today. Oh.
Yeah, right after service today, we're going to decorate in here and out there, and it's always a little bit chaotic, but super fun. We kind of figure it out as we go. But this year, we realized people are hungry after church, so we got a little bit of food. So if you weren't planning on staying today, but you want to stay and help set up some Christmas decorations, I think it usually takes us a couple hours, but even if you can only stay for an hour or something, and if there's not enough food, Aldi's right across the street, and we'll just fishes and loaves the situation, and we'll figure it out. Kids are welcome to stay, but, we'll be moving trees and things, so just keep that in mind. And then if your kids are like, we want to stay, but we're going to be super bored and annoying, then we'll put a movie on for them. I'm speaking about my own kids here. I'm not being mean. We'll put on a Christmas movie or something in here. So, stay if you want to.
They are growing restless. So we're going to call it at that. We have all these other details about all of the other things that are coming up. We'll continue to share all of the details about all of the stuff that's happening throughout Christmas, but I'm not going to go overboard with all those details now. You're already standing. I'll have you extend your hands as you're able to receive this blessing. So as those who believe in a self-emptying God committed to a life worth of the fullness of the human experience, may we be willing to self-empty. Maybe we be willing to commit to a life worth of racial justice and reconciliation. May we pursue awareness. May we foster relationships. And may we make a commitment to be good troublemakers. May that be so.